always have my eyes open for innovative ideas that can save investors money. If a byproduct of that idea also protects the environment, then I am open to learning more. I was contacted by the assistant to the CEO of Roof Maxx a while ago and had the opportunity to catch up with Mike Feazel and learn more about their business and how they can add up to 15 years of life on an asphalt roof. We talk about the savings and the positive impact their bio-friendly technology has on the environment. Well, welcome the CEO of Roof Maxx, Mr. Mike Feazel. Welcome to the show.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Dion.
I really appreciate you joining us here today. So, it's quite interesting what it is that you and your company is doing. I saw this from someone in our group. I believe it was Shelly, right? And she had she had posted some information about this, and I was quite curious, So why don't we just go ahead and get started? And you can tell our listeners a little bit about your background and provide a little bit of color, to how Roof Maxx came about.
Sure, absolutely. So my brother and I have been in the roofing industry for over 30 years, and we started off in the contracting side. We were replacement contractors, specifically for residential roofing, which is asphalt shingles or steep slope roofing. We did some flat roofing, but really the steep slope and the flat roofing are two different industries and two different types of contractors. We built a very successful replacement company, ended up selling that business to go down this path. But over that, and that was over a 25-year period. During that time, my brother and I sat on the National Advisory Council for the oldest and largest roofing manufacturer in the country, GAF. We helped design the first certified contractor program, which is still in existence today, the Master Elite program. I wrote a monthly column for Roofing Contractor magazine, and I co-founded Roofer Success International, which is the largest roofing university essentially in the country. I co-founded that with Jim Abrams, who consolidated the heating and cooling industry. Maybe you're familiar with 1 Hour Heating and Air and some of his businesses, but so very involved in the industry. And over that 25 years, we saw a shift in things that had changed. One of the biggest changes that the industry has seen in the last couple decades is the amount of asphalt used in an asphalt shingle. In the early 2000s, the oil refineries started using a new piece of technology called a coker, and asphalt is just a byproduct of refining oil. And it used to be about 5%, and used for roofs and used for roads. And during that period, when they started installing these cokers, they reduced that by roughly 50%, and the cost of asphalt tripled in just a few short years. Roofing shingles literally went through the roof, but they tripled in price. And because of that, the manufacturers use less asphalt. And today's shingles have about 1/3 less asphalt, and the manufacturers have just been put in that situation. And there's really no other option, I don't think. So the challenge is today's product lasts considerably, let's just say in a southern climate, Texas, Florida, 10, 12 years. In a northern climate, like Ohio, where I'm originally from, you're going to get 15 to 20 years. And roofing shingles prior to that, you put them on and there was no maintenance required. And they would last you 25, 30 years. And then you would replace them. And a roof needs replaced because it dries out, becomes brittle. The granules, the top coating sheds off. And like you get a pothole in the road, it's when the oil dries out. Well, the same thing happens to roof. You need to replace it. So fast forward 25 years later, we ended up selling our roofing business. And we went down this path to create a product that could extend the life of an asphalt roof. And ultimately what we came up with is a product which obviously is called Roof Maxx. And it's just a very simple, all natural bio or a plant-based treatment. Roof Maxx replaces, and it's an oil. So we're replacing the dried out petrochemical oil that causes a roof to fail, become brittle. Again, the same reason you get a pothole. So we're replacing those dried out petrochemical oil with an all natural bio oil. think of it like a skin moisturizer for your shingles. We spray it on. Within about 30 minutes, it penetrates down into the shingles. And over a 3-day period, it will start to restore flexibility of that asphalt to where all of a sudden it brings it back to life. And one treatment lasts for 5 years, and it's a repeatable process. And so we can extend the life of a roof. Most roofs that are nearing end of life, where people replace them, we find that we can get 2 treatments. We can treat it twice. There are some that have gone a little further, so maybe we can only treat it once. And there are some roofs that people have just gone way too far with it. And in that situation, we just, we tell them they need to replace it. But 90% of the time we can treat a roof twice and extend its life by another 10 years. If we catch it a little earlier than that, we can actually take it out 15 years with 3 treatments. Very simple process, clean, quick, and it's inexpensive.
So you mentioned the asphalt, and maybe for some listeners out there like myself, I'm very curious, and I'm not really familiar how, the intricacies and how these things work. So you said that the shingles of today only have about, it's like a third of what it used to have, right? Or half of what it used to have. Now, what exactly does the asphalt do, for the shingle itself?
Yeah, great question. So an asphalt shingle is very simple. There's a fiberglass mat that then asphalt is impregnated into. So then there's the asphalt, which is the waterproofing portion of the shingle, and it gives flexibility. A roof has to contract and expand because of the temperature fluctuations. Take a roof that's 150 degrees on a hot summer day and a thunderstorm blows in, cools the roof down to 60, 70 degrees just in a matter of minutes. Thunderstorm passes, temperature climbs back up, and the roof climbs back up to 140, 150, a lot of movement. And that roof is going through those cycles all the time. Even if it doesn't rain, just the temperature is rising from the morning throughout the day and then dropping back into the evening. So on top of the asphalt, so you have the fiberglass mat, you have the asphalt, waterproofing asphalt, and then you have ceramic granules that are embedded into the asphalt that help reflect the UV rays and of course also make it aesthetically pleasing. So that's pretty much it. Now there's the shingles. There's always been fillers put into the shingles, crushed limestone, but today's shingles have a lot more crushed limestone and a lot less asphalt. Again, like I said, because of the cost of asphalt. And now what you've seen over the last 20 years is all of the black streaking on the northern slope of roofs in about 80% of the country. It happens. It's a bigger issue in climates that have high humidity. So let's just say Florida as an example, extremely high humidity. And so the roofs become black. And it's called gliocapsomagma. It is an algae. It's an airborne spore that's in the dirt, blows up on the roof. And on the northern slope is where you get the dew in the morning. So there's your water source. The food source is the crushed limestone. And then you get the black streaking, real heavy black streaking on the shingles. And that was not as big of an issue 20 years ago when there was more asphalt and less crushed limestone. But today it's become a bigger issue aesthetically. So.
And so your company developed, it's a plant-based oil and solution, you said, right?
Yes.
Okay. And so, can you explain to us, what exactly, or walk us through the process of this? So let's say that, I'm a homeowner or, I'm an investor and I want to have an assessment done on my roof, and then you guys come over and you spray it. Like, what is the whole process like?
Okay. So the first process is coming out to make sure that the roof qualifies. So we are essentially a franchise. We're a dealership model. We're not a franchise. So all of our dealers across the country, we have over 200 and about 270 now, 270 and over 700 locations. So they're all trained. They will come out, inspect the roof to make sure that the roof qualifies. And then if it does qualify, prior to treatment, we do general maintenance, just very basic maintenance on a roof. And as an example, the plumbing pipes that come through the roof, they have a flashing and most of them around the country have a rubber gasket. In the old days, it was a lead boot. And there's parts of the country, a few places that still use the old lead boot, which lasts forever. But as most things have become more cost efficient, or and some people would call that cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And the rubber gasket around the boot dry rots at about 10 years and causes a roof leak. And a roofing contractor will want to come in and charge, $200 to $400, depending on the part of the country, depending on the contractor, to remove all of the shingles around the pipe, replace the entire flashing, and then put the shingles back. We simply install a new rubber gasket on every plumbing vent, whether it's dry rotted or not, because we know that ultimately it will. So we just slide a new rubber gasket down over top of the old gasket, and so that it gets it another 10 years. Repairing cracked or missing shingles, just very basic maintenance. And then we treat with Roof Maxx. We do the application. The average residential home, for an example, we're in and out within, let's call it about an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about anywhere from 15 to 25% the cost of a replacement. I'm going to say on average in that 15 to 20% range. It can be up to 25% if there's a lot of maintenance that needs done prior to treatment. So it just depends. But essentially, I say we're kind of like Jiffy Lube for your roof. We're not your mechanic. We're not your roofer. We're more like Jiffy Lube. We'll
Mm-hmm.
do the basic maintenance, change the oil, and then you're good to go. And in our case, for 5 years, come back in 5 years, take a look at the roof again, see that it's going to qualify for another treatment, and it's just a very simple process.
I like the analogy there. So
yeah.
you mentioned earlier that a lot of the work that you guys do is with pitched roofs, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
I know that especially for people in our audience and people that are syndicators, a lot of the multifamily properties that we deal with, I mean, we see you have some that are pitched, you have some that are flat. Is there any particular roof type where this would not necessarily be ideal to work with, or are there any limitations, I should say?
So really, it's designed for asphalt shingle roofs,
Mm-hmm.
which are only put on what they call steep slope. So it has to have a pitch to it. Typically with apartment complexes throughout the country, most of them are asphalt shingle. There are regions, let's say South Florida, you tend to see a little more tile in southern and in South Florida than you would in North Florida, but you still see asphalt. 85% of all steep slope roofs in the United States, whether it be a home, an apartment, a church, a school, 85% are asphalt shingle.
Mm-hmm.
So we work on 85% of the steep slope roofs out there. Now for flat roofing, we're working on another product. We're currently under testing. It will be a thicker formulation for flat roofs that have asphalt, and modified bitumen would be one of those roofs. Most flat roofs today are rubber or thermoplastic. There's many different roofing systems out there for commercial roofing. Europe is extremely big. It's mostly modified. Most of China and Asia is modified. So we want to get a product that's going to work over in Europe and other parts of the world. And of course, it'll work in the States wherever modified is used. But again, it's not as widely used in the States as it is in other parts of the world.
So it seems as though that your company, Roof Maxx, it's grown quite a lot, actually. I know you mentioned to me in just 1 year, your company grew 250, I think it was franchise locations in just 1 year, right?
Yes.
And now you have over 275 in 700 different locations, I think you mentioned.
Yes. Well, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So what exactly do you think is fueling the growth at this point?
Demand.
Mm.
There's just a need. Most people that have been in, someone that's 50, 60 years old, been in the real estate industry for a long time, and realized what the roofs were like back in the early, or even in the 80s and the 90s, right? Probably property investors that have been around that long. It's amazing. I talk to roofing contractors around the country, and most of our dealers, by the way, are not roofing contractors. We don't see them as the perfect partner. Although we do have a number of roofing contractors, most roofers today, about 70% don't want to do repairs. They want to only replace roofs. And that's another thing that shifted in the industry considerably. When I started in the mid 80s, everybody did repairs. It was part of servicing the customer. Today, they don't want to do that. They want to replace the roof. So they come out for a leak repair. They don't tell you they don't do repairs. They try to upsell you a new roof, unfortunately. So that's another kind of shift in the industry that we weren't real thrilled with. And we're trying to reel that back in just through market education, such as this. So the growth is because of the need. There's been a massive growth in metal roofing. And again, it's the older generation that knew that roofs lasted longer. And now you see the 55, 60 plus, they won't replace their asphalt roof. They'll go back with a metal roof, although metal roofing is about 3 times as expensive. There's a lot of HOAs. If you live in a housing development, many of them will not let you put a metal roof on. It doesn't meet the proper aesthetics. It's very big out in rural markets. But they're now coming out with metal roofs that look like asphalt shingles. So, but it's actually a metal roof. Again, extremely expensive, very labor intensive. So it's just been demand. You know, we're the fastest growing roofer in the United States at this point. We don't, like I said, we don't replace roofs. And we're one of the fastest growing business opportunities in history. So we knew early on, my brother and I did, when we decided to go down this path, that there would be a need. But you never know until you enter a market what that need might be. Now, of course, there's still skepticism, but that skepticism is slowly going away as we have more and more contracts. Maybe you're familiar with Open Door.
Yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
Yep. And I think Redfin is one of they're the bigger company. But I know Open Door just had a $3 billion investment. They put out a press release, and we're working with them now. Our dealer out of Florida is doing a national account with them. He'll service all these markets, and they wanted to deal with one contractor or one location. So he will basically be the point of contact for all Open Door locations. And then the local dealers in those markets will go through him, but they wanted one point of contact. Mm-hmm. So we're starting to really get the attention of some of the bigger players. I think one of the things that did help us early on is the people behind this. For one, we partner with American farmers. The funding comes from American farmers. Battelle Laboratories is who was brought on to create this formulation. They're the largest research and development company in the world. They, as an example, they manage Los Alamos National Labs for the U.S. government, and I think 6 or 7 other laboratories. They have locations globally, but we're based out of Columbus, Ohio. Battelle Labs is based out of Columbus, Ohio. The Ohio State University has done a lot of testing on this, still does. Life cycle analysis, how much debris can we keep out of landfills? You know, there's just, so there's so many things that we've done, I think, that has helped give credibility, but ultimately it's just educating the market that this exists. And then of course there's always going to be the early adopters and as you grow a market. Mm-hmm. So we're still in the very early stages here.
Yeah. Now you mentioned that you were essentially, there were some like studies, I guess, that are being done, right? Where you said you're looking at kind of reduction in landfills and whatnot. So it seems as though this product definitely has a positive environmental impact. Can we talk a little bit about that? You tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can keep shingles on a roof longer, then you're going to be able to keep raw materials in the ground. You're going to be able to keep landfill waste. Roofing is 10% of all landfill waste. Construction debris, it's 10% of all construction debris that goes in landfills is roofing. So it's a very, very large amount. They'll sit in the landfills for hundreds of years. So if we can extend the life, and we know that we can extend the life of the average roof that is at end of life. End of life is very subjective as to when a roof needs replaced. Roofing contractors are out there trying to sell roofs before they need replaced. Many contractors, I don't want to say all, but very many. Like I said, 70% no longer do repairs. But we know a roof that is at end of life. And as an example, Ohio State, we wanted them to do a study. So we took shingles off of a roof that had failed, When you bent the shingle, it snapped. We gave those shingles to Ohio State University. Half of the shingles were treated, the other half were untreated. Ohio State packaged them up and sent them to PRI testing labs. PRI is who does, they're out of Tampa, Florida. They do the ASTM testing, which is a material standard. It's a global performance standard for materials. They do the testing for most of the major roofing manufacturers. Before that bundle of shingles can be sold into the market, it needs to have a stamp that it's Class A rated, that it meets the flexibility standards of a new shingle. The degranulation, they have a scrubbing machine that makes sure the granules are adhering properly. So hail impact, the list goes on. So we wanted treated versus untreated of a roof that had failed. We wanted that study done, and that report's available on our website that Ohio State did. They got the study back, the testing results back from PRI, and then they put together a big report on it. So we took the shingle, and a shingle that had failed, and of course the shingle that was untreated did not pass flexibility, did not pass, a lot of the granules were coming off obviously during the degranulation test and so forth. But we were able to pass the flexibility of a brand new shingle required to go in the market. So we passed the ASTM flexibility testing of a new shingle after treating that shingle. We did not pass the degranulation test, but we were so close of a new shingle. Of course, we're not putting granules back on, the grit or the gravel. We're not putting that back on when we treat the roof. But if there's not enough granules on the roof when we come out to do the inspection, that's one of the reasons that we will fail a roof and say it doesn't qualify. If there's too much degranulation is what it's called, degranulation. Okay. So we make sure that roof is done properly. So we really feel that by this whole process, we can extend the life of roofs to a point where we feel that we could almost decrease the amount of landfill waste, let's say 30 to 50%. Now, of course, that would be every roof out there being treated. We feel by educating the market and over a period of time, we know we're not going to be the only ones in this market. I anticipate the market, this being a new market niche, of about $12 billion. If 50% of all roofs were treated every 5 years in the last half of their life cycle, so 50% in the last half of their life cycle every 5 years, it's a $12 billion new industry. So that's a massive industry, and we know competition is coming. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think, for one, it brings more awareness, and two, it helps become, I think we can get it to the point where people just treat the roof like they like they seal their deck, like they reseal their driveway. You buy a driveway, an asphalt driveway, you're going to reseal it. If you build a nice new deck, you're going to reseal it every few years. And today's roofing requires maintenance, so it makes sense. And as long as we educate the market and do a good job at that, and I think we are, I just believe within 5-10 years, people will treat their roofs, and I think we will dramatically reduce the amount of landfill waste and raw materials being wasted. And the most important resource of all, money. I mean, it's very expensive to replace a roof. It's over $12,000 for the average home now.
But in what you said earlier, basically, you're able to get this down to about 20%, essentially, right? 20% yes. Of that. Okay, so that's huge savings.
Yeah, so let's just say a roof lasts for 15 years today, 10 in Florida, and maybe let's go as far as even 20 in Ohio. So on an average of 15, and we don't see a lot of roofs going 20 anymore, especially the newer product. Even over the last decade, it seems to be getting lighter and lighter and more crushed limestone put in. We see asphalt roofs staining much quicker, so we even see a bigger shift in the quality of the material to the negative, unfortunately. But at 15 years, if you divide $12,000 and then you do 20% of that, so 12,000, so now you're $2,400. And you do that twice, so now you're $4,800. When you divide that on an annual basis, what the cost is for a roof, I mean, it's considerably less. And that can change state to state. California and Florida and New York are very expensive to put a roof on. And Ohio is less. And in Kentucky, West Virginia is even less. And when you go into rural markets, rural Ohio, the farming communities of Ohio, it's less because labor's different there. The cost of living's different there. But there's really no instance where we're not saving people money in any market. It's just more in other markets, in certain markets.
Okay.
It's more money. Yeah.
So my next question is in relation to the challenge that, and I would consider this to be a challenge because, like you just said, this is a niche, industry niche product for you guys, and you are basically the first entrance into this market. So educating the consumers is really, really challenging. So how would you go about, doing that, or suggesting that people, where should they go to get the right information so they can better understand the value behind what it is that Roof Maxx is bringing to market?
No, absolutely. Our website, roofmax.com, Roof Maxx is 2 X's, M-A-X-X, so roofmax.com. And if you simply just search Roof Maxx, we've been featured in Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur. I'm going to be on Fox and Friends March 21st. This is 2020, so March 21st. They're doing a full 10-minute segment with me in New York. So Property Brothers has looked at our product. Boise Boys, the shows from HGTV. The week after we're on Fox and Friends, there's an article, a special edition article that's going out. They wanted to wait until spring, of course, for home improvement season, going out in USA Today. So we're starting to gain that traction and that awareness. For me, it's really press, the media, the news media. We feel that Fox and Friends and Forbes and Inc. and Entrepreneur opened the door, I believe, for Fox and Friends. I think Fox and Friends, being that it's a national show, we're doing it in studio. I believe that will help open more doors. And again, all of that awareness is going to bring competition. And again, I believe competition is a good thing. It's going to, this is just such a big, roofing is such a massive market. 75 million single family homes alone. We're not talking apartments and condos and churches and schools and all the other things that have asphalt shingles on them. So it's going to take a handful of companies to tackle this problem. So, but it's very positive at this point in time. I didn't think it would come out this quick. It's taken off considerably quicker than what I had anticipated, and I'm a pretty optimistic guy.
Well, that you can't beat that. That's good. So
right.
And I guess just as a follow-up to my question and then even to your answer, because what I'm thinking is going through my mind, like take for an example, like I might think of like my mom or my aunt, my family members, that they don't really understand these things, right? They don't understand whether or not the roof needs to be replaced. I mean, take for a great example, you and I, we talked before we hit the record button, and you mentioned about how as the asphalt basically kind of, I guess it deteriorates over time, and you start to get water seeping into the roof, and that can cause mold. And then that can lead to a plethora of other health-related issues, right? So when we have people, they'll call a roofer, because you also mentioned there are many roofers out there they'll come out and they're just like, hey, replace the roof, right? And that's probably going to be the first thing that these consumers are going to hear, right? And so they still have these guys saying, replace the roof, replace the roof, replace the roof. And then you're here saying, well, look, you don't really need to do that. But I guess the fact is still that the first call they're probably going to make is to that roofer, or call their friend, hey, a roofer, and they're going to tell them to replace the roof. So, I mean, what would you say to these people?
So, I mean, it makes sense to call Roof Maxx dealer, because if, we warrant the product for 5 years, it's not a leak-free warranty, it's a flexibility warranty, saying that the shingle will function the way it was meant to function when it came out of the package, when it was installed on your roof, which really it's just flexibility and keeping the granules in place. When we treat a roof, we restore flexibility, but we also are locking the granules, or for not 100%, but we're helping lock the granules back in place because the asphalt is now malleable.
Mhm.
It's not brittle, and brittle asphalt is what causes the granules to come off. So I would just say call a Roof Maxx dealer for now. So we are working on a technology with 3 scientists out of the Ohio State University. We are calling it the Shingle Life Meter. At this point in time, it will be ready at some point here in 2020. I was just at a national convention for some of the largest home inspectors in the country, announcing this new technology, which is an AI, it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, that right now we're training to where they would download an app, use the camera from your phone, and take images on the southernmost facing slope, because that's the weakest link. That's what gets the UV exposure, and that's where a roof fails first. And then, of course, you replace the entire roof, although the northern slope, has not seen nearly the UV, so it's probably still functioning properly. So we will be able to determine where that roof is at in its life cycle based on degranulation alone. We're using light refraction and some other technologies, other ways of doing this to determine where it's at in its life cycle. And what we ultimately want to do, we want to put this in the hands of a third-party expert, which is a home inspector. And there's 60, 70,000 home inspectors in the US. They really want this tool because it removes liability from them. And again, roofing is very subjective. I could come out and look at the roof on a home that you may be buying, and the shingles look okay, but yet the flashings, the flashings around your chimney and your skylight, things of that nature, may be where the leaks are coming in. And so this tool is not going to detect leaks, but it will be able to detect where that roof is at in its life cycle. And because of that, then know whether or not the roof should really be replaced. So if we can put that in the hands of the home inspectors, we would like to educate the market that call a home inspector, call a third-party individual expert to come out and look at the roof and say that, yes, you need a roof, or, maybe Roof Maxx will work for you. So it's going to be a complete education process, going through a complete education process.
And that's expected, you're expecting that to come out, you said later this year?
We're hoping that it will be out later this year.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Wow, that'll be great. Yeah, because then, you figure that's pretty objective then at that point, to have a third party come out.
Yeah.
And use that type of tool.
And they'll really have there's no advantage for them to tell you one way or another, right? You need that biased or unbiased just view of that roof, and technology can give that today. So, yeah. Okay,
great. Well, I really appreciate having you on and educating us and telling us about Roof Maxx. And it definitely seems as though you guys, you're doing something even bigger, I feel, with this company, especially when you figure that you're able to, if you could get out to more people, get out to more homes and buildings, you could significantly reduce a lot of waste in the environment. And I think that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, thank you. The product is one thing. We really are a sustainability company. It's an all green product. It's bio preferred, USDA bio preferred. So there's a couple sides to it. I really feel that this is a full circle business. Definitely excited to get up every day and go to work after getting it to where we're at now. We're 5 years into this process of building, almost 5 years into getting it ready for launch, and we launched September of 2018. So things are really moving along quite nicely, and we'll just continue to keep swinging every day. So we're excited, that's for sure.